in that type of environment, you know, the crowd screaming and you just come back from a round and all that going on, I don't see the effectiveness of adding to that chaos by you screaming and then there's another cornerman there. So I try to be the opposite of that. The Diaz fight, the rematch, immediately in the locker room screaming for it, and I'm like, did you not just see what happened? Like, there's handier fights out there. Like, why the hell would you chase Fight Floyd? Okay, obviously it was a good payday, but you're going in against an incredible boxer. So he's loves the challenges. But with Conor, he can actually fight pretty much every day in the gym because he's so rarely hit. But for him to be caught like with just a kind of a wrestler's overhand right there, that's pretty much never happens. And in all my time to see him, never seen him hit with a shot like that. And you always think, is there something I can say? Because, you know, you got this kid that's not Conor, not just Conor, but any kid, and you're like, no, it's because it's like a death. You know, it's going to take time. They got to mourn, feel miserable, accept that emotion, let it wash through you.
You can slip and catch them on your arms. They're slaps.
I'm not the guy that's going to give him the Rocky speech every time he walks in the gym. Like, that'd be freaking exhausting.
Have you given many of those?
Never.
I've been called the biggest Conor McGregor dick rider in the past because I've defended him. So to everyone who had a go at us, where's your John Kavanagh podcast?
I thought you were having a really sly dig at John then. I was like, oh shit, what's going on?
No, just
where's this going?
Yeah, exactly.
No, just fuck those guys. Do you know what I mean? It worked.
Welcome. You did say, you called me this morning and you just went, John Kavanagh's coming on my podcast. I was like, yeah, he is, you right?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a fanboy, mate, so I'll try not to ask you everything you've already been asked before.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on, mate.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You flew in this morning from...
Yeah, just came straight from the airport. So I was supposed to be here for a fight. Unfortunately, that's off. And then I guess I got tweeted by your Irish boy. And
send in someone you know. That's my theory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Someone from Northern Ireland, as you said.
Northern Ireland, Waterford. They're right beside each other.
No, that's a private joke.
Yeah.
Forget that. But yeah, is that what your life's like now? Just flying here, there, and everywhere.
This week particularly heavy. 4 nights, 4 cities, 7 fights altogether.
And you're cornering these guys in every time.
Yes.
Because for me, it's like doing 4 podcasts requires research. Like,
yes.
And you have to be prepared for this. To do a fight is even more intense than that, and you have to be ready, game plan. You've prepared all these guys. Like, how can you possibly be armed like that many times in a week for that?
I tend to focus on the fighter rather than their opponent. Just for example, so actually your Russian colleague, same name, Kosti, he's fighting tomorrow night, and he's on his 13th opponent. So 12 guys have pulled out in the last 2 weeks. So if you put a huge amount of effort into guy number 1, you're like, okay, he kind of moves this way, watch for his right hand. Okay, we're on guy number 2 now. All right, I'll do a bit of research on him. Okay, he's got good kicks. Well, we're on fight number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we're on number 13. At this stage, I'm just like, just get someone in the cage with him. He just needs to fight.
You've had that quite a bit in your career as a coach there.
Yeah, that's a particularly bad one. I think we did see with Conor, there was some stat, it was like 50% of the time the opponent changes in his career. So yeah, we learned early on that there's going to be someone on the other side of the cage, similar weight class. They can probably strike and grapple. Everybody that fights in MMA can do some striking and grappling. So be ready for that. If it's a really big fight, yeah, you put a little bit more time into it and just see what their tendencies are like. But to be honest, it changes so often at this stage. I'm just like, okay, what are you good at? What's my guy good at? That's what we're going to focus on. They might have their hopes and dreams, their opponent, but that's not really important to me. We've got a good right hand. We've a good double leg. We're good at taking the back and choking. That's what's going to happen in the contest. So,
one thing I noticed about you from day one was how young you are to be a coach, a teacher, and you got like people like Freddie Roach, Gustafsson, like these famous coaches of the past, and here you are, and you hadn't really had a huge MMA career yourself, and all of a sudden you're teaching people. How do you go about acquiring that knowledge without winning a world title yourself, for example, in order to deliver that to guys who want to win world titles? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a very new sport. So it turned 25 last Monday. So everybody involved. I'm an old guy.
We're all babies, sort of thing.
Yeah. And the great thing about the sport as well is it's still being figured out. What's the best way of doing things? I remember when you remember that famous when Machida
Dude.
crane kicked Randy Couture.
Yeah.
I mean, if a couple of years ago, if you'd have said a karate guy will knock out a really good wrestler with a crane kick, you're going to
I'm a
laugh
huge
at them.
Machida fan. By
Oh,
the way.
yeah?
So like, obviously, I started like a lot of people did Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, and then when Machida came on, and like I was a Karate Kid fan when I was a kid. I was like,
Me too.
Daniel LaRusso's here.
Yes.
Like he's in the
Yeah.
flesh.
Yeah.
And he turns up and he can't be touched, he can't be hit. And it really, even Rogan was like, welcome to the Machida era.
Yeah.
Like we all thought
I remember
this is
that, yeah.
the style, like
Yeah.
hit without being hit, and it's like a variation on boxing. And yeah, it does seem to come in cycles though. Like we had the dominance of a wrestler, and it does feel like with Cormier, Khabib, and a lot of good wrestlers out there that's coming back now. Do you think?
Right. Yeah, but it's coming back with add-ons. You know, like if you look at Khabib, you know, his stand-up had improved hugely in his fight with Conor. If you go back 2 or 3 fights. So yeah, it's evolving all the time, and just being good at one thing or even being good at 2 things is not good enough anymore if you want to get to that very elite level. So it's one of the things I do love about the sport is that you're constantly, even my guy Lee Hammond, actually he's fighting right now, I guess, and he's fighting for the IMF world title in Bahrain, and in his first fight in the tournament this week he hit a submission that's never been done before. You know, the sports did that all, and if first off, a hamoplata we're calling it, isn't it? His name is Hammond. It's a variation of an omoplata and a head and arm strangle. So my girlfriend, I gave her a shout out. Orla named it a hamoplata, and then it got stolen. Like I steal most of her stuff. So yeah,
including our clothes, of course.
Yeah,
I've seen the
that's what I'm
pictures.
wearing.
She's sponsored by Monster Energy, of course.
So it's one of the things it's a real attraction for me for MMA is that you can't rest on your laurels. You can't be like, okay, we got to figure it out now, so this is what you do, and then some kid comes along and does something completely different. You're like, oh, okay, now we got to watch out for that. Yeah, always growing.
How do you do that? Because I always find it interesting when you hear athletes in all these different sports interviewed. If you football and basketball guys very often now are talking about, I'll pick one thing and I'll add that to my game. Is that a similar approach with a fight? Will you look at a fighter and go, right, let's try and add something to you before your fight? Or can you add 3 things at a time? How many different things can you work on at once with one fighter?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you've got your training to learn period, and then you have your fighting to win period, and you've got to. So that's why if a fighter is kind of not really in the gym much, and then he just comes in for a 6-week fight camp, not going to go too far, because during that 6 weeks you're fighting to win. So you're kind of polishing what you're already very good at. Because look, we're going to kick the legs off this guy, or we're going to wrestle him, or whatever we're going to do. So let's just fine tune that game plan. You're not going to win at 4 or 6 weeks out. Say, okay, let's add on boxing, which you're not really good at.
Yeah.
That has to happen outside of that 6 or 8 week period. That's your training to learn period, and that's where you get to see if someone's going to really go with this sport, because they're doing that because it's enjoyable. You must enjoy something if you're going to be good at it, because you're going to have to do it for about 10 years before you're any sort of decent skill level. So it's a little bit on them. It's a little bit on the fighter. That's where they have to accept personal responsibility. I have a busy fight team. I'm not the type of coach that's like, where's Dave today? And then I'm in the office calling him. If he's in, he gets my attention. If he's not, he doesn't. So yeah, it's a little bit on the fighter, and then they've got to be, when their fight's over, when their contest is over, back in the gym. Okay, let's analyze what we did there, what we did well, what we need to work on. And okay, I've never seen you really go for takedowns. Let's spend a 4 or 6 week or 3 month period working your single legs.
That actually sounds quite enjoyable. Like sort of looking at something.
It has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be. If it's not enjoyable, then you won't do it enough. I'm actually putting together. I'm doing a talk next week about motivation, and it's a little bit of talking about that the idea of motivation is kind of nonsensical, because I could motivate you to do something short term, play a Rocky montage and get you fired up. But tomorrow, then you're going to have to find something it's going to have to be something else other than like a cool 80s song that got you moving. You're going to have to enjoy it, because anything worth doing, being a really good musician or a good fighter or a good artist or in a successful business, it's going to be daily effort for 10 years. It doesn't seem to be avoidable. Even Lee Hammond, I've looking back over so many of my fighters. Lee Hammond's with me 10 years this year, and he's fighting for his world title in IMF. Conor was with me 10 years. He fought for his first world title.
Is that the magic number in your mind?
It seems to be.
Yeah.
It seems to be.
10,000 hours kind of.
Yeah.
rule,
It just seems to somewhere fall in that. Now you get the odd freak. Gunnar Nelson was a competitive black belt after less than 4 years training. I really disliked that guy because I was 12. I was really 12.
Annoying.
I was 12 years trying to get any sort of decent level. But there's always going to be outliers. But if you look at the bell curve, the meat of the population, if you're sitting there and you're saying, right, I'm going to get really good at guitar, I'm going to be able to play guitar to a very high level, right, get ready for daily effort for 10 years, and then you're going to be what we're talking about. So
from the teaching perspective, like, what is it that drew you to that then? Is there a reason why you wanted to go into that?
Yeah, so I was always a teacher. I love teaching anything. I taught my mother how to use her computer, and when I was in university, I was studying engineering and maths, and like when it came close to graduating, I was thinking, well, what do I want to do? I came close to moving to Boston. I was down to the last two for a job with Boston Scientific, which would have meant moving to Boston, and I would have never really done MMA or any of that world.
Wow. That's problem solving as well, though, weirdly, which kind of is jiu-jitsu, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. There's a
theme here.
I sometimes it annoys me that I put 5 years into being an engineer. Like, I wish I had done sports science or business or accountancy, something that would have been useful for what I do now. But
then you could have charged Conor double.
Yeah.
All right, mate. I'm your fucking accountant as well, pal.
He's in the side going, great Conor.
I'm taking 40% next fight.
So when I graduated, I decided. I opened my first gym, but I was in between going back and doing a HDIP to become a maths teacher. I just really love teaching. I love that moment where you see someone's eyes kind of go, oh yeah, you get that realization. It
never ends though either, does it? Like, as in, I guess when you want to be world champion, there's a shelf life for when you're either going to do it or you're not. But you could do this till you're Mr. Miyagi, basically, couldn't you? You could be that guy who's 65 and still fulfilled by this passion.
I hope so. I had that image of me being like, Mickey and Rocky, like I'm this old wizard guy in the corner, like screaming at people. That's not how you do it.
Yeah. Do you think you'll go the whole way?
I could never see myself not being involved at some level. Maybe the high-end professional end, I think that has a shelf life because it's very stressful and there's a huge amount of travel and it's wearing. But I just came from the amateur. I was briefly at the amateur world championships there in Bahrain, and I loved that atmosphere. Really, I could see myself going more towards that as time goes on. But sitting at home and just staring at the walls, no, I'd be itching to go down to the gym and hear about this new kid that's doing really well on the circuit. Let's have a look at him. How's he moving? And
at this point, you must have your pick of talent, especially in Ireland, I would guess. Is there a way you sort of go through things in your mind when you're looking at new talent coming through? How you decide who gets your time?
Whoever shows up, whoever shows up, and I have a MMA team session every day, 1:00. It's always pretty busy, but there still is the few faces that are just there all the time, and then you've got the drifters, and I've got guys who come in and do fight camps, but just that person that's just there consistently, day in day out. I did an interview with Joe Wicks, and I was talking about this 10,000 hour thing and stick-to-itness. That's really what it comes down to. You say, well, how quickly can you tell if somebody's going to be high level at fighting? And there's definitely some early indicators. But one thing I can't answer is he going to be here in a year? Is he on a real buzz for these 3 months now and just going at it, and you see he's good striking, his wrestling's coming on, he's in phenomenal shape. But maybe he's a little bit injury prone, or maybe he gets a new girlfriend, or he finds, he just drifts. But it's just that guy that's just stick-to-itness. That's just going to be doing the daily grind,
self-motivated,
as we call it. Has to be self-motivated because he has to enjoy it. I'm not the guy that's going to give him the Rocky speech every time he walks in the gym. That'd be freaking exhausting.
Have you given many of those?
Never.
You seem quite a calm guy. Like, even between rounds, you see some corner screaming at the fighter. Even in the Khabib fight, I remember he had two guys screaming at him at one point, and you're just like, "This is what we work for." Like, and you're very simple messages straight ahead.
Yeah. Well, if you can imagine what must be going on. Yeah, I fought a few times, but in that type of environment, you know, with the crowd screaming and you just come back from a round and all that going on, I don't see the effectiveness of adding to that chaos by you screaming and then there's another cornerman there. So I try to be the opposite of that. And I usually have what I'm going to say ready about 30 seconds before the round is over. One positive and then one thing to watch out for. And then that's it.
Because that's all you can retain in that.
Well, what are you going to say? You know, you see guys in for 60 seconds and they're demonstrating moves and getting on the floor. Wait, watch this move. And I even see that like in warm-up rooms, fighters, you know, the coach is teaching them a technique. I'm like, really? You're going to teach them something new? And they're making the walk?
What you were saying before about how there's time to learn and then there's time to sharpen those tools. And when Eddie Alvarez was saying, oh, we're changing up pads, we're doing this, we're learning this. And you're like, dude, like, you're wasting your fucking time. Yeah, exactly. You know, even when I see say fighters and you know, they pull out fight week with an injury. It's just happened one of my guys recently as well, and you think, well, what were you doing fight week that was that strenuous? Were you sparring? At that stage, then we call that anxiety training. That's because you're thinking, 5 days time. It's almost like cramming for an exam, which we all did, and it kind of works for memory. It works for short term. You can actually cram quite well for exams, but you can't do that for skill. You know, you imagine you were suddenly going to be playing on Wembley Arena. Again, I'll go back playing the piano or something like that, and you're like, okay, well, I better do. You know, you're not going to learn anything at this stage, and we're fighting even more so. So our last 2 weeks is usually pretty soft training, and it's very hard. You're in your 20s. You're thinking about this motherfucker you're going to be fighting. You know, the crowd's going to be there. It's very hard to hold the guy back at that stage. It must be really hard with Conor, especially because when we see him in the press conference in the weigh-ins, I mean, he's the most animated fighter of all time, and like I've seen.
Yeah, but he has a switch. You know, he's a professional. He more than most understands that really? 2 week period, and I've been able to hold him back. You know, and certainly in his younger days when he was, you know, in his late teens and early 20s. Yeah, just wanted to fight every day.
What were those years like when you first met him and stuff? What was that like?
You know, I always kind of joke saying this, that, you know, you walked in the gym and the clouds open and a thunderbolt came down, but it was just another guy walking in the gym. A few things early on that were good indicators was that he could hit exceptionally hard, and I'm really struggling to find the formula for that. I really don't want to just say that it's magic, but
his body looks different. That for me, that's my main thing is. He has really long arms and really broad shoulders, but he's not a very big guy in terms of height.
Yes,
it's an odd shape.
Yeah, and heavy hitters do seem to have. And then you look at a Tyson, and he's a small squat guy. Yeah. So it's technical, genetic, and then seems to be something to do with levers as well, lengths of limbs.
Yeah, Varasa Hobby was saying something about lengths of distance of muscle tissue where they connect and all this crap, and I'm just like, dude, it's all too complicated. Like, you just know their chin fucking seems to shatter. Right.
So yeah, and I'm kind of like that as well. I just kind of like to know what the results are, and the results are you hit very hard, you southpaw, so you already know that's going to be awkward for his opponents. Very witty, very funny, very confident.
That confidence was always there, even when. You chinned him a bit or something. I read about that in your book. Yeah, you chinned him, didn't you, a bit?
No, that's it's not quite like that.
Not on the feet, but you took him down and sort of,
it was, a million years ago.
I don't want this getting clipped up, by the way. John Kavanagh offers out Conor McGregor for the next UFC fight.
Yeah.
Twist.
Yeah, I'm glad we're friends now, because he could certainly do a whole lot worse to me now. But yeah, I remember like one of our early training sessions. When he came to me, he was already a decent boxer, but he had no grappling, no wrestling at all. And we're doing a drill, and I took him down, but he wouldn't stop. And I was like, "See when your back hit the mat?" That was the end of it. And he goes, "All right." Fast forward about 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and we're doing the drill again. And I end up on my back, and he goes, "See when your back hit the mat?" That was the end of the drill. I was like, "Oh, you're a motherfucker." So we had that rapport very early on. And his obsessiveness with technique as well, that was unusual. I still haven't really seen that since. Just constantly messaging me, what about this, What about that? What about this?
His
Look at
mind
this
does
view.
seem to never shut off. does
Never.
it?
He says he can't watch a movie because, you know, it's too long to not be thinking about this.
Yeah.
You know, he's going halfway through. He's like drifting, thinking about two gorillas headlocking each other.
Is his attention span just crap generally, like in terms of other stuff, like
In
if it's
terms
not
of
what
other
he
stuff.
wants to talk about?
Oh, he just won't. No, he won't at all. No, you can't get him to put his attention on. He doesn't have to. He's got that FU money, as we say. But then if you're talking about a topic of interest, whether that's business or fighting, yes, you're going to have his full attention.
Was there a moment back then where you were like, oh, this guy is the guy who's going to take this gym to the next level in terms of SBG's, just global awareness or whatever? Was there a moment?
You know, like kind of Gunnar Nelson broke before Conor. You know, he had a couple of big wins in the UFC, and I actually moved to Iceland. I packed up and gone, and I lasted about 6 months there. It was very dark, very cold.
I've got pals out there.
Why did you move to Iceland?
I just was kind of done with Dublin, you know. I wanted to try something new. Conor just didn't seem to be able to get a break. The gym, I was always just broke. Gym was never making any money. I got a little bit disillusioned, and I fell in love with Iceland when I went for a weekend every now and then. Then I actually packed up and moved there, and it was late summer, and I got it past the first winter, and then I was like, oh god, no, I have to go home. And then a couple of things just happened quickly together, and one of them was him getting the offer. He got finally, Sean Shelby, after years of bugging him, replied to my email, and we got it. I won't say late notice. It wasn't late notice at all. We got four months notice, his debut in Sweden. And I thought, okay, if I can keep this guy on the straight and narrow for these next few months, because he was even, I felt, starting to drift a little bit, you know, because he'd put so much into it. And again, he was just, again, that 10-year broke entrepreneurial story where you're just every day just, I'm sure you have a story getting, now you're in this beautiful London apartment, but
Thank you very much.
We didn't start here, right?
Definitely not.
We're just given this day one, and just days where you're going, what am I doing? Like, what's the point of this?
Well, it's that obsession for me personally of like always trying, and like having moments like this is a affirmation of like, all right, I am doing the right thing here.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm getting people I respect on the show and stuff.
Right.
But yeah.
So we got that contract, and then that was another boost. And I just felt if I can get him in front of Dana, in front of the cameras, and he fights the way he fights, and then we ended up getting matched against a friend of mine. His gym, it's another SBG. It's like, of all the freaking guys we could have got, Marcus
Brimage
Brimage.
on it. He's a good fighter, it seemed.
Yeah.
He put up a good...
I knew what would happen.
Right.
We all knew. Anyone that follows Conor knew what was going to happen.
The angles he was coming in from in that first fight were insane.
It was gorgeous. It's a gorgeous fight. I still like watching it back.
Kenny Florian called it as well. Fair play to him.
Kenny, he gave us a nice shout out. We got some good sound bites out of that, and then of course the 60 G's, baby. That was the beginning of his little sound bites.
Dana had a very. I think Dana just seeing the dollar signs very, very quickly with Conor.
Oh yeah, well you can imagine as a promoter, you know, you look at this guy and he's Irish and he's witty, he's charming, he's loud, and he can fight like hell. It's not like he was just a good talker and then fighting was, you know, great fighter, great talker. They don't come along very often.
One thing I feel like hasn't been really appreciated from the rest of the MMA world, the ones who don't like Conor, is that he didn't have it easy at all, and a lot of people felt like they were favourable matchups. But then when you look at how good Dustin Poirier has been post the McGregor fight and other fighters like Eddie Alvarez, and he really had a hard run in my opinion. The one fight I always think was like the defining moment, looking back at that period of time, was the Chad Mendes fight. It just seemed like everything was against you guys, the injury, the pullout, and it all been building up this title fight. What was that night like in particular that ended with you on the cage with him?
Yeah, that was one of those affirmation moments. Just really, really special, you know. That was, I think, is about his 10th year with me. Started with me 16, 17, and I guess that's 3 or 4 years ago now. Words fail, you know. He
was crying at the end of that fight. Like, I think that's when, and then looking back at it, we've never seen anything like emotional from him anywhere near that. Like that's when you know how much it meant to him. how did you feel when he was on the bottom in the second round, particularly? And it's, everyone said that this is what would happen.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
not that stressed. It's 25 minutes. We knew we had 25 minutes in there. No, I wasn't really concerned yet. If he had have come back in a bad way from the end of that round, and you go out round 3 and he's immediately taken down as well, you're like, well, okay, now we're looking at a scenario where he's down 3 rounds. He's got to finish him. But at that stage, okay, Mendes was slowing down a little bit. He wasn't massive amounts of damage, and he was kind of complaining to her when Conor was hitting him. So you could see frustrating was kicking in, and a big part of it as well was just how much Conor was enjoying it. So it's infectious. It's one of my favorite images actually, where he walks out for round 2 and he's smiling at him, and he's going like this, and he's got a cut. And
when a fighter does that, there's something it does to the other fighter. I remember Brock Lesnar smiling at Shane Corwin for the second round after Shane Corwin had wailed on him for about 5 minutes.
Right.
That's not what you want to see, is it? No. When someone's fucking smiling, you're like, come here then, and you're like, fuck me, I've just given you everything I've got. It's not ideal.
No, I wouldn't be fond of that.
Nah, that was like a real moment for me, because it felt like if he wins this, then he's the real deal. But I believed he was going to win it, but it seemed like the whole MMA world was just not fully convinced yet, because he could talk, he could knock people out, but Chad Mendes was on a higher level than anyone he'd fought.
And I loved the technique he used, because it's there's a few like highlight reels, and I call it the heartbreaker. So I have a pretty good guillotine choke, and anytime I roll with Conor, and as his level was getting better and better and better, it got to the stage where I was very rarely able to catch him, but I could get him with the odd guillotine choke, until this came along, that he does this kind of crocodile roll, which Gunnar Nelson actually come up with. Well, I'm sure it's other people have done as well. That was the first time I'd seen it, and then I showed it to Conor. I don't know why I did, because then my only chance of getting him was gone. So I used to call it the heartbreaker, because I would just about have him, and he'd spin out, and then he'd be on top of me, and I'd be like, God damn it. And there was a little clip of us training just a couple of weeks in the lead up to the Mendes fight, and we were going over that. And then he does it in the fight, and the camera switches to me, and you see like this big ear to ear grin. He does the heartbreaker.
That was his signature move as well. Like Mendes, you can see Rogan's like, it's curtains. This is it. It's over.
Team alpha male, very good guillotines. And you look at the shape of Mendes, you can imagine the squeeze he would have.
Oh yeah,
very good at that choke. But Conor's very good at getting out of it, and
I think he's underrated as well, kind of for that specifically, like catching him, like in terms of people, like he's been submitted before, but generally I think it's not like a glaring weakness like at all. I think his ground game's a lot better than what people give him credit for, and his takedown defense, as we're seeing in the Khabib fight. Like even Daniel Cormier came out, who basically trains with Khabib, and was like, McGregor did everything right, pretty much. Like it's just Khabib's just very good. But, you know what I mean?
How that I always find interesting is the higher level you get, the more likely you are to find someone who's got something that you've never come up against before, or that they've got the ultimate strength that Conor might not be able to come up against. How do you train someone for that? Because your guillotine isn't going to be the same as someone who is maybe the best in the world at that, or something like that. How do you train someone for that and prepare them for possibly the best version of whatever they're coming up against?
Sure. To flip it around, I always wonder how people prepare for Conor. Like how are you going to get this southpaw in that just hits so hard? And it just comes down to, look, you've got to do your best. You've got to bring in guys that have similar looks. How are you going to prepare for Floyd Mayweather, the greatest defensive boxer of all time? You do your best. So I don't think there's any, or nobody has figured out anyway, any exact magical formula. We try to look at our tendencies. We try to create scenarios to replicate them. We try to get sparring partners to replicate their movements. And then you do your best. You win, and
it always just strikes me, you must get into the ring, or someone must get into the ring at some point and sort of think, I've never been hit that hard before. This is the hardest I've ever been hit. And he's up, you're looking at Conor McGregor, and he's just going, I hit pretty hard. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, some opponents have kind of admitted that the first one is sort of jarring. You get that like, the kind of, you kind of,
your vision blurs a little.
I felt like with the Alvarez fight in particular, there was a look on his face, and Alvarez is a hard man.
Yes.
But there was a what the fuck moment there when he was lying on the floor like, I was like, you poor bastard. Because I'm a fan of Eddie Alvarez.
Me too.
Damn.
Have you ever said to Conor, just hit me as hard as you can? Sort of a Tyler Durden style moment.
I don't think you would do that.
No, I'm just like,
absolutely.
What's the most you've let him unleash on you? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely not. That's not my thing.
That's pretty sadistic if you do walk into a room and go, go on, just hit me as hard as you can.
It'd be masochistic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So moving on from that, the Aldo fight. I felt like personally that was when we seen a superstar born, because and what really annoyed me from a fan of McGregor, because I kind of just took a liking to him because he's a shit talker and I like shit talkers, and his movement was so unusual. But when he did that, and he predicted it as well. First exchange, this is what's going to happen. You see the pictures backstage. Like, it wasn't just like talk. He really believed that this was going to happen very quickly. Everyone calls Aldo the pound for pound number one. They introduce him as that. Joe Rogan calls him that. Everyone is accepting of that. Conor McGregor wins. No one calls him pound for pound number one at all. He didn't just win. He smoked him, and it was like, there's a lucky punch. Like, was that a little bit for you, being Team McGregor? Frustrating still, because you're like, what do we have to do?
Absolutely predictable. Absolutely predictable. So because of that, I just don't let it bother me. He's very well paid. He's won some great fights. He's got a couple of championship belts. That's more than enough. And we get some ribbing online, but we get a huge amount of support as well. Your good self, and
thank you.
We get so much support. So you can kind of, I guess, you can choose to sort of read bad comments, or you can choose to read good comments. And I used to go through them all, and it'd be kind of, what's the point? It's not gonna make you feel any better at the end of the day. So I'm very lucky. I've got just kind of a very super low level of celebrity in Dublin that I pretty much just stop with people saying, "You're doing a great job, thank you," or I liked your book, or Conor's speeches have given me a little bit of inspiration. That's the level I receive, and that's the world I choose to stay in and live in, and it's mostly positive. So
yeah, and I do want to talk about like a lot of your other fighters and stuff like that. So I don't mean to just kind of Conor, but obviously this is sort of something I've wanted to ask you for a while, so I apologise for that.
It's understandable.
So for me as a fan of Conor, when he fought Nate, that was obviously supposed to be the lightweight fight. It got cancelled, and then next thing you know, he's fighting a fucking welterweight, huge Nate Diaz. But it did feel like knocking Jose Aldo out as easy and as quickly as he did was probably the worst thing that ever happened to Conor's fight career, in my opinion, from a fan, because he looked so fucking confident in that Nate fight, walking in like, I'm just going to fucking tear through this guy. And when you watch that first round, he isn't picking his shots anywhere near as carefully, and he's being very wild and just expecting him to go. And although he underestimated Nate, and everyone did, I think, to be fair, Nate showed what a fighter he is in that fight. But was that... We've seen the documentary, we see how quiet it is in the locker room afterwards. Was that one of the most humbling moments of the career of you guys as a team?
Yeah, I mean, every loss is miserable on the day. There's no. I've done, I think, close to 1,000 fights maybe at this stage, and
wow,
plenty of losses in there. And you always think, is there something I can say? Because you got this kid that's not Conor, not just Conor, but any kid, and you're like, no, it's because it's like a death. It's going to take time. They got to mourn. And there's no point in trying to skip that. Don't you worry about that. You're going to get him next time. No, feel miserable. Accept that emotion. Let it wash through you, and it'll pass in a couple of hours, or a day or two at most. I say I usually lock myself in a dark room and eat a lot of chocolate for a day, but then you step out of the room.
Yeah, I could say after the Khabib fight, you were pretty wounded on the Rogan podcast. Yeah, upset almost a little bit. I could see that behind
of course. I'm not a robot, and I'm not going to pretend that they didn't irk me a lot. And of course I still now have moments where damn it, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? But you can't live in that world, and I certainly don't, because we have great wins, and I don't spend months. Did you see that? Because
that's what me to do.
I'm the next weekend with another kid and another show, and you've just got to get ready for that. And Conor's always been, I think, really, really good at handling losses, because I think the role of a coach early on with a fighter in any sport, to be honest, is to create an environment where it's safe to have lots of little failures, have loads of little failures every day. Have little failures in your gym, little losses. In jiu-jitsu, it's very apparent because you have to tap out. That's a loss. In boxing, you get hit. In wrestling, you get a takedown. and get comfortable with that, and understand actually if you don't have lots of little failures, you're never going to improve. I have some guys that when they join my fight team, you know, maybe they've come from a smaller team or their skill level isn't quite there yet, and they're just getting, you know, they never have any real success. Every time they try something, they lose, and it can make them really down. I say, well, the only thing worse than losing all the time in the gym would be winning all the time in the gym. If you're in an environment in your gym where failure and losses is not part of your daily routine, you should probably look at trying to expand or trying to bring in someone who can do that to you. So if early on, before the bright lights are shining, you're comfortable with those multiple failures and losses, and you see what they actually do for you and that they make you improve. Fast forward a decade, and you learn you can handle major traumatic losses and failures, and you know what to do. You know to hold your head up. Everybody has stumbles, and accept it, see what went wrong, improve it. And it's one of my favorite stories, that loss to Nate and then the 4-month training and then coming back and the win. I get asked to go to schools and give talks and stuff like that. I talk a lot about that journey, and you know, he could have ran the other way, he could have pointed his finger and blamed people, but no, took it on the chin, made the adjustments, went back in, and then, you know, it was a nice fairy tale ending that we won.
It's sort of your whole ethos is win or learn, isn't it? I guess so. That breathes life into that.
Best-selling book,
yeah.
And
we'll put that.
Makes
in
a great stocking seller. And
we'll put that in the description for him.
It's interesting though, because I listened to, it's actually a Conan O'Brien podcast yesterday, and he was saying some people learn the wrong things from a win, some people learn the wrong things from a loss, and it's about finding the right thing to learn. Have you picked that up along the way? Because obviously when you have a win, that feeling, you almost want to leave it all behind and be like, we won, we did it all right. But that's not always the case, is it? Yeah,
you know, it's hard getting to get to the top, and it's a lot tougher staying at the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to try and maintain that beginner attitude and always be trying to improve yourself and learn. It's not easy, but that's just a constant kind of battle that you have with yourself. But yeah, if you don't, you'll be passed by.
How do you get a fighter, or you know, someone who is a Conor McGregor, someone who's such a big personality, someone who maybe publicly acts, you know, they've got everything worked out? How privately do you cultivate a mentality where you are learning with him? Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Again, like, you know, the training environment, you know, Conor loves going against guys who are better than him. You know, like Dylan Dennis is higher level jiu-jitsu than Conor. That's just a fact. And he will tap Conor a bit when they're rolling. But he keeps jumping in there. He doesn't want to go with some guy that's not any good to him. Like, why the hell would he chase Fight and Flight? Okay, obviously it was a good payday, but you're going in against an incredible boxer. He chased the Habib fight after 2 years outside the cage. Why the hell would you? I wouldn't want to do that. So he loves the challenges. He loves going in against guys who he loves training in those type of environments where he is going to have small failures and sit back and say, what do I, you know? I think especially for Conor, he gets frustrated. He actually will get kind of pissed off if his partners are not putting it on him. He really wants to feel that pressure. So it's not really something that I have to put a huge amount of effort in. It kind of just happens.
Do you know, with this young lad, you've got Gallagher,
yes,
who showed a lot of talent and he got knocked out recently in Bellator. What was it like talking to him after that? Did you take some of those lessons that you've learned with Conor and use them in bringing him back up? And
that's, you know, I'm very lucky that I have such a strong person like that in the gym, that the likes of Gallagher has seen what he did after, you know, he's had a couple of losses, you know, Duffy lost, Sidnikov lost, obviously the Nate loss. So you kind of have to just go, see, remember what he did? You know, you don't have to go through it all again. But Gallagher is, you know, I think he was 20 or something when that happened, but he's got an old head and young shoulders.
Oh yeah. He seemed to deal with it really well mentally. Fantastic,
you know, and he was 7-0 going into that, and it is, you know, getting rid of that is always a tough one. And as a coach, you're always kind of like, well, what will they do with this? Are they going to you know, have a kind of a diva fit and just leave, or are you going to? You never quite know, because it is.
They blame you.
I figured what way it would go. You know.
Have you ever been blamed from a fighter before? Had an argument or whatever after a fight?
I don't know. No, I haven't. No, thankfully, no.
Do you think that's the relationship you build with them, where it's not about that dynamic?
Yeah. I think as well, like if you genuinely put everything into the contest, if you prepare it as best you can, you go in there and you have a good fight. The loss is not as traumatic. You know, you kind of, well, better guy won on the line. Well, what are you going to do? If you got well paid and relatively injury free and we can be back in the gym next week, we can't really ask for a huge amount more than that. And with Gallagher, yeah, he came backstage and he kicked chairs around and had a little breakdown, which is absolutely normal. And then the next day he was smiling and like, all right, here we go. You know, what did I do wrong? Give me the breakdown. What am I going to do? How am I going to improve on that? You know, like when Gallagher was 15, he moved down from the north of Ireland. He moved down and lived with me, dropped out of school and lived with me for a couple of years. So we would have daily conversations. You know, we would come back from the gym and just be chatting into the night. So I kind of probably had more contact with him than pretty much any of my fighters, because we just had that relationship, kind of big brother relationship. So I wasn't surprised how he reacted to it.
Sorry, am I?
Cool.
I'm always interested in the dynamic between, you know, someone who is, because essentially you're a partner, but you're also someone who's teaching them something. You're someone who's trying to take them on a journey, and sometimes, you know, the classic narrative is that you know, the mentor becomes the guy who learns in the end. Or those, you know, the dynamic's always changing between the person who's teaching and the person who's being taught.
Right.
How do you? Do you try and cultivate the same dynamic with every fighter, or are you tailor-making that to each fighter? Because to me, that strikes me as a really hard thing. And a lot of teachers go through that. They have to find the right way to teach. Yeah. And that relationship just takes time. You know, there's no way to rush it. We do get a lot of inquiries from fighters, and you know, they're training somewhere else, and they're like, they have a big fight in 2 weeks' time. They message, can I come in and prepare for the fight? I'm like, no. Yeah. What am I going to do in 2 weeks? It's not some secret magic move that we have that others don't. And that goes for any gym. It's time in. And a relationship between a fighter and a coach takes a long time to build that level of trust. I don't see any way of, like, there's actually, when I was in Tel Aviv a couple of nights ago, and my guy was calling a technique. He was caught in a choke. He was out about to tap. He put his hand up to tap. And the way he was positioned, he could actually catch my eyes. So I was able to, like, physically show him what to do. But that took a lot of trust for him to do what I was telling him, because he was going unconscious. And thankfully, thankfully it worked out. He escaped and he went on to win the fight. I drifted there. What the hell was the question? Building that relationship and sort of, and because I guess what I was trying to get is how adaptable you are as a teacher. So I do think it's the coach's job to adapt, you know, because the fighters are going to have different personalities and different needs, and some I'm a drill sergeant with and need that. Some I'm more passive and just creating the environment for them to be able to figure things out themselves. You have to just put in that time, and you've got to hang out with them. You've got to see what they like to read, what TV they like. You know, it like I said, there's no quick formula. It's time. Get to know them, get to know their personality, experience different scenarios with them, and then you sort of learn, okay. One trick I have actually is that I try to get all of my fighters to corner with me for at least one fight, because then I can usually see what they want. Right. So if I see them backstage and they're getting the guy motivated, come on, you're gonna smash this guy, there's no way. I'm kind of looking at him going, so he likes that. Yeah. Maybe they're super quiet backstage. Okay, he probably just likes quietness. Yeah. You know. So that's one little thing I have, one little sort of trick almost I have to see. Which is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. It's like you see in what they do. They will corner in the way that they want to be cornered. Yeah, which is really interesting. I mean, I guess we have a similar relationship in that sense. Like, we're like. I think me and you are like him and Conor. Yeah, if that makes sense. Which one's which? He's the calm one. Oh right, yeah, sure. Because we were sort of thrown into the fire when we went away. We went on a football trip, 3 really intense days. Oh god! And I had no idea how to direct Brian. And at that time, I was typing myself around as a director. And I had no idea how to direct you. So I was going, let's just get into this scene. And you were like, what are we doing? And I was like, come on, we know what we're doing. And now, having been directed by you and having directed you more, we have a much better working relationship. And I think we trust each other a lot more. Trust. Yeah. And trust takes time. You can't claim to trust somebody after a day. Yeah, exactly. You're lying. Yeah. Or crazy. Or both. Or both. But I find that so fascinating as well, especially with, you've written a book on it. Like, do you... For me, what I'm trying to get at is that, like, how much of the psychology are you thinking, right, I need to do this in order for him to react like this, and then we're going to get to this stage? Or is it more intuitive as a process for you? And do you want them to know that process, or do you want them to be completely oblivious to it? Because that's a tricky way of balancing.
Yeah, I think I know your question. Like, and there is times where I know that if I tell someone to do something, they probably won't.
Yeah.
But if I can make them think it's their idea, then they will.
Oh,
so, you know.
Funny that. What?
You have a story about this?
Our life's like that. To be honest with you. No,
I'll go, should we get a nice new flat at the top of a tower block? A few days later, Lawrence, I was thinking we should get a nice new flat at the top of a tower block. That's a great idea, Brian. That's a fantastic idea.
So
that wasn't it.
I'm pretty sure you don't have to have those chats with Conor.
No.
He's a good spender from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Which, like, moving on throughout his fight career, you had the Mayweather fight, which to me was just like, it was what it was. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been great if he'd won it. And so actually, when I look back at that, I think to myself, like, because you have your what ifs as a fan of a football team or a fighter or whatever, and I think to myself, what if he'd hung back at the start and sort of, or was just like, well, you're the boxer, come on then, beat me up, you know, and instead of having to go out there and put it on him, because Conor's a counter puncher, and when he did land, it was a counter punch that landed on me. Have you thought about that as well?
Of course, and he agrees with your assessment more or less. I have no interest in going into boxing. It was a one-off. It's just not the sport for me. I love mixed martial arts. I have a huge amount of time and respect for it. But that was a big thing I took away from it, that the boxing game seems to be, there's almost like 3 acts in a 12-round fight. You get the first 4 rounds, it's almost like a feeling out process. The middle 4 rounds, which seems to determine who's going to win or lose, and then the final 4 rounds, which is usually just a finale, you know. And we put a huge amount into the first 4 rounds, which, you know, I think in round 1, I don't think Mayweather even threw a punch. He might have thrown one, and you compare that with Conor's output. So he's a wily veteran. It was a pleasure to be a part of it and to see a real.
See what he's doing now with this little bloody. Where's he from? Japan. This kid Tenshin Nakamura, I think his name is.
Right.
That's back on now.
It's back on now. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I don't know is it just pure boxing, or is there?
It will be boxing.
Just pure boxing.
He's not getting anyone kicking him in this lifetime.
Does he get paid for the press conferences? Because this would be a really genius way. Fights on, fights off. 12 press conferences later, you're a millionaire.
No, he said he's been paid like 10 million just for the press conference or some shit like that.
I'd call the fight off and on if that was what was going on.
It's a bit embarrassing I guess for me with McGregor. There was.
I'll give you a funny one. I had a guy message me just a few days ago, and Chinese kickboxer wanted to do 3 rounds with Conor for 5 million.
Wow. You say I'll put it to him,
and he was going to put it in escrow. Like, it wasn't like he was just, because they get a million messages like that a day that you just don't pay attention. But this guy was connected, and it was, you know, it was a legitimate offer. But I know he wouldn't.
You must get so many, like you say, you must get millions.
Yeah, like I said,
just tell him I know a YouTuber. He'll turn up.
Yeah,
we'll split it.
He'll split the shit out of you as well.
Yeah, just to get the odd funny message like that. And like I said, it was a genuine. I know the boxing promoter well, and he's very well known. So he wasn't going to come with an offer that wasn't legitimate. It's
funny because there's a Chinese guy who wants to fight you for 20 quid in the back alley, but I don't know if you're down for it.
That was just because of the takeaway.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we had that moment, and it was iconic in that. But coming back into Khabib, I've watched the Khabib fight a few times now, and I really feel like he could have won that fight, even though he had 2 years off. I felt like, when Rogan talked to you about it, he was like, does he really deserve a rematch after it was so dominant? And when I look back at it, I was like, not really. I didn't think it was that dominant of a fight at all. But in the moment, you get carried away with the emotions. These two titans are going head to head. It feels that way. But correct us if you think I'm wrong, but I felt like round 1 was not really a lot happening. Round 2, Khabib, I feel like it's fair to say, got lucky with that punch, because in 99 fights, I don't think Khabib will make that again, like that overhand right, and that really gave him the round. But even still, after that, the worst round that Conor had probably had in the UFC, he still won the 3rd round, and obviously he got the takedown in the 4th. But do you now, looking back at that, feel an immediate rematch is like the way forward for Conor?
First part first. So yeah, the fight, massively disagree with anything you said there. I don't think it was a lucky punch. I think if you throw a punch, you mean it to land, and it landed. So you know, credit where it's due. But yeah, that was a shock. You know, I hadn't really seen that kind of style of shot from him.
When I say lucky,
so hard to hit.
he's not. That's not Khabib's game. That's what I
know.
mean.
I definitely know what you're saying. I also know about Twitter hate you'll get for saying that. But Conor's so hard to hit in the gym. Like he just very rarely. Like when you're training fighters, it's tough. Okay, so the best training for fighters is fighting. Now the problem with that is that it's hard on your body. So you can't just fight all day every day because you're taking punishment. But it would be the ideal way to train because it gets you very skillful very fast. So we have to come up with games to sort of mimic that, blah, 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 blah. But with Conor, he can actually fight pretty much every day in the gym because he's so rarely hit. So I think that's actually why he got so good, so fast. But for him to be caught like with just a kind of a wrestler's overhand right there, that's pretty much never happens. And in all my time to see him, never seen him hit with a shot like that. But if you, again, even in the fight, half a second later, he spun him on the fence and he landed his own knee. And
he actually got up at the end of the second round, back to his feet from a takedown after such a bad round.
He did well there. Then round 3, he won it on all the judges' cards. So I feel like this fight for me hinged on two things. I felt like that right hand was huge for Khabib, confidence, and everything just went through the roof. Belief, and then he got the takedown, and it sort of sent him on the path of probably winning the fight. But also, I felt like Conor lacking that sharpness in the third round that he usually has, to where when you're on the feet with him, like, and one of the things that surprised me, obviously that's 2 years off, that will happen, but when he just walked towards Khabib flat-footed at the start of the first round, me and the boys were watching the fight, and I'm like, he doesn't just walk towards anyone. Was there a reason for that? He did want to feel the clinch early. You know, we had maybe slight disagreements on the strategy, but he did want to feel that.
He looked like he was going to walk the dog.
Yeah, he was just like, come on, go for your takedown. Let's feel the clinch. And he had actually a great moment in that in the openings of that takedown exchange. You know, he actually ended up on top. And then Khabib did a great job of reversing it and eventually ending up on top. But it was I don't know, again, it's a competitiveness. If if the guy's great at kicking, all right, well, let's exchange kicks. Let's see how that feels like. You're great at whatever area you're great at. Come on, show me. So I think that's what he was wanting to feel.
That's ego, isn't it? A little bit. Do you think?
I think it's almost just like it's interesting to him. Yeah. Right. Well, everybody talks about it. Let's do it. Let's feel it. You know. I don't know if it's ego. I don't know what it is. I think it's curiosity. Yeah.
There sounds like a really interesting mentality there, because a lot of people's immediate reaction to anything painful is, I'm going to avoid that.
Right.
Even fighters are like, I'm going to try and avoid a punch.
Right.
Whereas Conor goes the other way and goes, let's try it. See if his
attitude is different to other fighters. Like I feel like a George St. Pierre has made a great career out of putting the fight where he is going to win it, guaranteed almost. Whereas Conor's attitude seems to be, let's take the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best way to do it. I don't know. Would you change that if you?
I suppose if you look at his results he's gotten, it's 2-weight world and 2-weight champion in Cage Warriors and 2-weight champion in UFC. He's done all right.
That's why people love him as well.
He's done all right.
He's not fighting's a brave sport, but he is in my opinion, one of the braver guys for taking on the challenges he does.
Incredibly courageous. You know, I do joke about the Diaz fight, the rematch immediately, like, in the locker room screaming for it, and I'm like, did you not just see what happened? Like, there's handier fights out there. He's a terrifying individual.
Can I get your opinion on one thing that, because he broke this down on Instagram, and a lot of people felt like one of the lines was directed about coaching, or I don't know, you can shed some light on it. He said, I gave my attacking, grappling no respect, 2 defense-minded lessons. Listen to nobody but yourself on your skill set. You are the master of your own universe. I am the master of this, and I must take my own advice. Was that about his game plan, or was that just general?
The honest answer is I don't know. I haven't actually spoken to him about that. I haven't really seen him since the fight, to be honest. I've been just hit the ground running. You know, I've got so much on, and he's doing his whiskey tour of the world. It's actually sold out worldwide. It's crazy. Anyway, I don't know. You're gonna ask me to get in the mind of another human, and I can't do it. He said what he said, and you'd have to when you get him as your next guest.
Fingers crossed.
You'll have to ask him.
You got his phone number.
I've got 5 million.
Does it? Because obviously that's not a question where we're trying to draw you out. But does it bother you from the outside where people make their assumptions about what Conor's saying and goes, he's having a go at his coach there, he's doing this. Yeah. Does that bother you, or is that just like Casper the Friendly Ghost?
What's Casper the Friendly
Ghost? It doesn't mean anything.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we have to spotlight on us somewhat. I'm eternally hugely grateful for the life that Conor's pretty much given me, and it was back and forward. But part of that is that he's an interesting person. People want to talk about him. So again, just completely predictable. He puts out a long message like that. Of course,
it's a very long message.
Of course, it's going to.
I appreciated his honesty though, from breaking it down because I
thought it was actually great for the fans to see his mindset, because he normally, like, that's usually what I get. I got something similar to that. I do jokes saying after the Alda fight, I got a message like that about everything that he did wrong and things he wants to improve on. I was like, 11 seconds, and he was, you know, you did pretty well. But it was. I actually read that, and I was like, that's cool. I'm actually glad to see people are getting a little glimpse at the way he.
Very honest with himself.
Very honest, you know.
Not as arrogant as what everyone seems to think.
You know, he's so many great sound bites, and he's got that one about being confident in preparation, but always humble in victory or defeat. I really like that one, and that's how he is. He goes into contest fully 100%. Believing he's going to win. Like he says, you're going to feel something, so why not feel like a world champion?
Do you know, with the long write up like that, I'm just wondering, would you have written that out to him when he did the bus incident by any chance? You know, like maybe when you got on the plane at Ireland, and then some point in the middle of that, I'm just watching thinking, there's no way John Kavanagh's on that plane. We knew that you weren't involved in that.
And I got barred from it, and I was like, I was in Budapest. Don't pin that one on me.
No one would have thought that you'd be. That was the first thing I thought was, what would John Kavanagh think of this? So what were you thinking when that happened?
You know, I can't help but have admiration for, if you know, at the end of the day, him and Artem are mates. They're two blokes that are friends, and he saw his friend being, if you want to use the term, bullied or whatever way you know, the videos are there. People can make up their own minds on it, and to have a mate that goes, right, I'm getting on a plane, and not that he knew what was going to happen, but just to back up his friend, just to be there for him, and okay, look, we can all be perfect bastions of morality and sit back and clutch our pearls and go, oh my god, I wouldn't have done anything like that. But just if we look at it as the two mates and just going over to make sure his mate was okay, check on his mate, whatever happened. I can't help but have a little bit of, in fact, I'm not going to lie, to have a lot of admiration to see him making sure his friend is okay.
Shout out to the greatest of all time, Artem Lobov, the GOAT.
One thing that did strike me about that fight, which you were talking about, the actual fight, the technique, all those things, was the culture clash between the two camps, the two completely different approaches. I'm wondering how, because we were watching on TV, I honestly still don't think you ever get, and it's impossible almost to get the atmosphere inside an arena through a television. Was that a different feeling that night, specifically in the air?
Not really, you know. I mean, when it's a McGregor fight, there's just a palpable tension in the air, and that's if he's facing Poirier or Holloway or Habib. So no, there's always that walkout, and it's always intense, and you know, you're looking around, and it's just the front row is always just like major stars, and so no, I didn't get any real feel from the opposing corner. Actually, it's funny, I was at a fight last night. We had Keane Cowley, and Habib and his father were sitting there watching it. Right. So that was.
What was that like?
Did you give him a wave?
All right, lads.
All right, boys.
Fancy a knock?
Yeah.
No, I didn't actually see him, but look,
he's seen you. He's just glaring at you from this rafters, the eagle ready to pounce.
Yeah, I would like to hope that this is all just kind of moving on. You know, at the end of the day, I'm into this for sport. I love the sport. Things got a little bit out of hand on that, and I just want to move on. I just want to move past it. Well, I'm at a show every weekend, and I want to be able to look. Let's build interest in the fight, because that seems to be a way of making sure both athletes are well paid. So build interest in the fight, train hard, step in there, give it everything you have. One hand is going to be raised, and then have a handshake at the end, because I almost feel like fighting, like, let's say if you want to say pick one organization like the UFC, we're like a traveling circus. We go from town to town. It's the same faces at all of them, the same few camps, few coaches, fighters. We all need each other, you know.
Well, very much so. I feel like that is crystal clear from Conor's career. Jose Aldo would never have. He would not be known by so many more people if he hadn't had the perfect arch rival in Conor.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of that it's done.
Well, I'll do two more questions on the fight then, because I do want to move on from that one. But did you see the clip of him saying it's just business in the cage when they were clinched against the cage, and Khabib says something and Conor says it's only business? Did you see that?
I've seen the clip. I didn't quite hear if that's what he said, or I haven't spoken to him about it. I don't know.
Well, he seems that's Conor's nature.
That's what he does about everything, you know. It's like what would have happened if Conor had won? Do you think he would have? He would have just you know what I mean. He's had his wins, he's had his losses, and it's always at the end like, all right, well done, or congratulations, and you move on.
Is the Khabib fight the next one that you'd want, or would you want someone else? Cowboys.
I want one that has Conor fired up. If you're to put a gun to my head and say you choose the next fight, it'd be Nate Diaz, the trilogy for the 165.
You love that fight, don't you?
Love it.
Yeah,
it's a great fight. They match up so well. I think even just personality wise, they match up very well. Stylistically, it's a really nice fight to watch. You know, I still watch that 5-rounder back every now and again, and the first fight as well. It was enjoyable too. So that'd be for me. But it would have to be the one if Conor was to like burst into the gym in the morning and be like, the Poirier fight's back on, you know, we're doing a rematch, and I could see that in him, this fire. I'd be like, okay, great, because I just love watching Conor fight. I love training him and training with him. It's a good buzz in the lead up. I love watching you know, I get the best seat in the house to watch him compete. He's got such nice fluid movement in striking and his grappling. So who his dance partner is not massively important to me. It's the one that I see Conor light up, because it's almost his biggest challenge now, because it's, you know, he still enjoys the negotiation with the UFC to get a few more zeros on a check, but it's not really what's going on. Like what could he buy if he gets another 50 million that he can't buy now, like, you know? So
was the motivation post Mayweather money an issue, like in training for? I mean, obviously the Khabib bad blood seemed to boil a bit, but was that the same Conor in training for that fight as it was for Alvarez, Nate Diaz? Was it pretty much the same, or was there differences?
Yeah, like the great thing about, say, the Eddie fight, you know, which I think is one of his best performances of all time, is if you look at that year we had, you know, he had the loss, and then he went insane training for 4 months for Diaz, and then we pretty much came straight out to that into another couple of months of tough training, and then he went in against Eddie. I just thought he looked fantastic in that. We didn't have that type of year between the Floyd fight. You know, his whiskey deal was bubbling away in the background. He's been at that for years now. It only broke recently, but he's been at it for years. He's putting a lot of time into that, and, you know, the kid, and he's other interests in his life. So you're just not going to be able to keep up that level of intensity that we had in the other one. Now, it's not in any way trying to make an excuse or anything like that. And when the fight was made, he was all in, and we trained hard. But yeah,
life changes though.
Life changes,
especially with a son.
Right,
completely.
Another one on the way now. Yeah, another one on the way.
I mean, the swimmers are working. We can confirm that.
Strong. Yeah.
What about so there's Dylan Dennis, who's definitely a charismatic lad and unbelievable.
That's one way to put it.
Unbelievable on the ground. I love how he trolls. Like, I think he's got the potential to be a huge name in the game as well already. His debut, he looked great on the ground, but on the feet he did get caught quite badly a couple of times. What was your assessment of that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, his stand up is nowhere near where his grappling is. But that guy was no joke. You know, I could have put, you know, Bellator sent me a list of names, and you could pick an orthodox guy that's kind of tall and lanky, and then you can just get underneath his hands and get a body lock. But this guy was a short, squat, powerful.
You had a hard hit on him, is for sure.
Yeah.
The fact that Dylan, I think that punch could have knocked Dylan out. Actually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what we were saying when we were watching it back. Weren't
right
we?
on the side of the dome, like I mean, he caught him perfect, and he's still awake, like.
Yeah. So if you want to say from a coaching point of view, you look at it and you go, great. You know, this guy can take a shot. He's not gun shy. You know, you're never quite sure how someone's going to react to like a really powerful shot like that, because you don't want to do that in the gym too often. You're going to have much of a conversation as if you're doing that all the time. But to see it in the fight that he took the shot, he still come at the guy, put the hands up, and went back in there. That's shown the right, you know, heart and attitude, and he has that kind of fight in him.
Well, he landed a few on Khabib, didn't he? At the end of the day.
Because once you have that, then I think the technical side of fighting is actually pretty simple, but it's very hard to. People are rare that like take a big shot like that and then still come in and are still trying to make their technique work. It's a lot easier just to kind of fall apart.
He kept his composure.
So that's the big takeaway from that fight for me. Is he the Floyd Mayweather of boxing? No. His striking is obviously way behind his grappling, but that it has to be just functional enough to get to the stage where he can get a hold of someone. Yeah. Because he's a very unusual modern day MMA fighter that he could literally pull guard against pretty much anybody and have them tapping in seconds later. His grappling is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Is he on, like, because to me, like popular grapplers that we've seen in the past, like Damian Maia,
right?
Where would you compare him to people of the past in the UFC? What level?
I honestly think he's arguably the best, and the reason why I say that is because like we're all everybody in the gym is we can't wait for the Gunnar Nelson Dylan Dennis grapple that's going to happen. We're going to sell pay-per-views for that, you know. Gunny has just such beautiful grappling. It's just incredible to watch, but it's a very different style to Dylan. So Gunny's very like controlled, get on top of you, wear you down. He feels like a freaking house has landed on you when he's on top of you. Dylan is much more submission heavy. Just wherever you are, you're fighting out of a knee bar, and then you just about get that, and then you're in an arm lock, and you might just get out of that, then he's strangling you. Just such a heavy submission game that everywhere is just dangerous with him. You just can't put your hand anywhere near him.
How's he so good, so young?
Again, he's got a good story about being in a local school in Jersey. That's where is it New Jersey or Jersey?
I think so.
Anyway, and he got really good there, you know, with not many training partners, kind of lower level training partners, but he always was watching Marcelo Garcia. You know, he was kind of watching him, and then eventually he got to the stage where he was traveling, like I think it was like an hour and a half maybe to get there at 16 or 17. He would get there early, do the session. He was broke, he had no money. He'd have to just kind of hang out at a Starbucks or something, then do the evening session, and then get to train home that night. You know, 3 or 4 hours traveling every day for a 16, 17-year-old. And he just did that for years.
That's that self-motivation.
Because he freaking loved it. He didn't need any rocky speeches. He loved it.
We've got a YouTuber who's been calling Dylan out. I think you might have heard of this. Jake Paul. And he had a boxing match. Now, I really want to play the footage of the boxing match just to get your opinion. These two are both 0-0,
okay.
Amateur boxing.
Well, I met his opponent, KSI. Right?
Yeah, well, this is KSI's little brother.
Yeah.
KSI didn't fight this guy.
No, so KSI fought his older brother.
It's confusing.
2 brothers?
Yeah,
Brothers.
It's annoying.
This was a cool storyline, though. It worked well.
On a tag team.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my god, tag team.
So this is them boxing.
Good.
Okay,
you can see that. Yeah,
I can stretch it over here.
So this is this guy in this white. He wants to box Dylan Dennis. He thinks he can take Dylan after watching his MMA fight. What are you saying here? What are you thinking after watching Dylan sparring and stuff like that?
It's a shame you can't hear the great commentary.
We commentated.
You commentated.
Joe Rogan, watch out. That's a joke, by the way, before everyone kills me in the comments.
Yeah. I mean, he's confident on his feet. He's got decent
He's on every Instagram post that when Dylan puts a picture out, this kid Jake Paul will comment, "I would smash you."
Right. The one thing that he doesn't have is that he doesn't have like huge power, and that's the thing if you're facing Dylan, like, and that's almost why I put him in with that like small, powerful guy just to see how he'd react. But him facing anybody that's like a volume striker, it doesn't have real one punch knockout power. Their problem is that there's going to be a clinch. It's unavoidable. And then Dylan has really good takedowns, but like I said, he's a rare breed of modern day MMA fighter that he could literally throw guard. He could just sit down on the ground.
Well, he wants to box this kid.
Just pure boxing?
Just boxing.
Okay.
You're not a stand-up fighter. I'm not a stand-up fighter.
Let's pure boxing.
Let's go and box.
Because actually he's a wrestler as well, Jake Paul.
Yeah, he was a wrestler at
amateur
school.
wrestler. Yeah.
Okay. In pure boxing, I just think it'd probably be pretty ugly to fight. I don't know if I'd buy the pay-per-view. In terms of MMA, I don't know what the guy's grappling is like, but I would bet my house that he'd be submitted in less than
without a
seconds.
doubt, mate. Completely agree with you. I just wanted to put that here because this is being talked about a lot on YouTube lately.
Yeah, it's not a bad little contest there.
No, they're decent. This is his first ever fight sort of stuff. We put this on YouTube. Did pretty good numbers considering. It was fun.
It's interesting with people like Dylan. I often wonder if they have like a different kind of feel for the body, or like almost like they can feel your joints, or they can feel something different, like because sometimes when you watch him, it almost like he's trying to work out a Rubik's cube, like where he's gonna work it.
Yeah.
And like he's trying to click something into place, and he knows from that point he's got you. Do you ever watch someone and just see this intuition for not being able to break a bone, but being able to twist something or make that person
I'm always cautious of like putting it down to intuition or talent if I know the backstory. Like I said, his backstory is 4 or 5 hours grappling every day for 10 years. Yeah, that's going to give you levels of intuition. So he's a very good grappler. Right. He's a very good grappler. You have a neck, you have 2 arms, you have 2 legs. He's been in. There's not really any position you're going to show him that he hasn't had hundreds of hours of experience of like, okay, when I'm usually in that position, this technique is open, and he's just so good at so many moves. Whereas sometimes you roll with someone, and you say, all right, this guy's got really good leg locks, let's just avoid that, and then you're kind of okay. With Dylan, he's just so good at everything. He's got great arm locks, he's got a phenomenal guillotine, leg locks are just ridiculous. He can take the back, he's good off his back, just a really top of the I'll steal a Joe Rogan, a really top of the food chain grappler. A black belt who taps other black belts. He's a as someone who's kind of more drawn to the grappling aspects of MMA than striking, just suits my personality. I just love watching him move. Just gorgeous grappling.
Out of other than your own fighters, when you watch MMA, who is it who you probably choose to watch the most?
I'm always excited to see Rani Yahya, a lighter bantamweight, UFC bantamweight, because he's a Hickson black belt. So we're always like, is he going to do something?
Isn't Hickson's son being signed by the UFC?
Hickson, Chrome Gracie. I love watching his fights. Like Hickson is, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy and you've been doing it for a decade or two, Hickson is basically, your superhero. So at any opportunity you have to either see him directly, or at least someone who's only one removed, someone like Yaya, or obviously Crone, even more so, you can't help but the hairs in your neck stand up, and what am I going to pick up? Am I going to pick up a new way of holding the guard, or has he got a way of taking the back? And
they're the royal family, aren't they, basically?
Yeah.
What about John Jones versus Gustafsson? Have you got any thoughts on that? That's a big fight coming up.
That's a huge fight. I'm very excited about that. Very excited about that.
Because how is John Jones going to come back? That's a thing.
It's
drug testing.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But just looking at that, from a competitive and technical point of view, those two are a great matchup. Yeah, a really great matchup.
They're the Diaz-Conor of that division.
I think so. It's the only matchup I can think of for John Jones where you're genuinely thinking he could lose. Yeah, there's a really good chance he could lose this. In fact, if you were again gun to my head, I would put my money on Gustafsson to win.
Really?
Yeah. I think Gustafsson wins that fight. He
But
did.
the thing is, with John, I felt, I mean, who knows what was going on behind closed doors. I know he tested positive for something at the end of the day, but when he didn't test positive since he sort of came in, it was the OSP fight, and he wasn't his best showing. And Gustafsson's looked really good lately. It's just, if he comes back and cleans out Gustafsson, I've just got to give it up to him. Like, that'd be unbelievable.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, like, because he was going through the competition so what appeared to be effortlessly, did he just grow kind of tired of it? Was it just like, how were his team, or again, I won't say his coaches or his team, how was he motivating himself to go to the gym every day and do the hard rounds, do the tough sparring, the tough grappling, putting yourself in tough situations, when he was apparently able just to step outside the matrix and just catch bullets?
Yeah, it does feel like the only way to make him appreciate those amazing skills that he's just gifted with is to take the game away from him, to be able to play it with them. So maybe now we'll finally get a John Jones like at his peak, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think partly because of that, because he's back doing what he seems to enjoy, and partly because he's already faced Gustafsson and knows he's no joke. Knows he's not able just to run through him. He's facing someone who can beat him. So is that getting him up in the morning? Is he fired up? It's that's one of the fights this year I'm really looking forward to.
Do you enjoy that the second time around? You know, a fighter fighting someone again.
Definitely.
Different kind of fight, isn't it?
Definitely. I just think they've felt each other, and it's always interesting to see, are they going to come in with a similar game plan, or do they change things around? And it just makes for a better contest. Sometimes sounds kind of silly, like, but like say wrestlers, when I competed a bit in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and stuff, and when I was, wrestlers would say they didn't care. They would actually warm up with someone they knew they were going to compete with, because they're like, there's no like secret moves, like, but it sometimes would make the match a little bit better, because you kind of, there's that awkwardness is gone, like there's a bit of a flow.
Round one's almost gone.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a fluidity to it. I used to actually think, I wonder what it'd be like if the two guys could warm up backstage and then go out. Like I'm sure, say, you know, like in WWE, they're wrestling, they would kind of practice their moves backstage, so they had that sort of flow and fluidity when you step in there. And I think, almost thinking MMA, that'd be a good thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
And so
didn't Eddie Alvarez actually warm up next to Conor McGregor they were fighting the same night once, weren't they?
Correct. The Poirier fight. That was a funny one.
Do you ever feel under pressure as a coach to repeat the success with Conor? Do you ever like have those worries of, oh God, like I need to find the next guy and build him up? And is that really a pressure that you put on yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I like if we should actually look up now. I wonder, did Lee Hammond win that? But if he did, that would be the third.
Can we get on that
live reaction? Me crying here if he hasn't. But that'll be the fourth world champion that I've trained.
Wow.
3 amateur and one professional. So we've had, I think, decent repeatability. He won split decision? Fucking yes.
A win's a win then, man.
Yeah.
Really happy with that.
Yeah.
Really happy with that. That's brilliant. That's great news.
I like that.
So
there you go, and he's got the flag.
Deadly. That's freaking great. That's great. He joined in our kids' classes as I think he was 12 or 13 or something, very young kid. And to see him go through that, come into the teens, then come over into the senior classes, and he's had a tough year. So for him to go out there and win that world title is huge. So that's now our third amateur world champion, and then obviously Conor is professional world champion. So I'm happy that we do have repeatability in our training methods are producing good results, because it would be that way if none of my rest of my team could get a win, but I have this absolute rock star. Then you think, well, that's just a one-off. It was a fluke, if you want to say. But
you want, I suppose, I guess people like Greg Jackson and people like that, they have that reputation of they produce like a team of killers.
they're the peers I'm chasing, that I'm looking up to, that they just have obviously have great training methods, that they just seem to have a what am I trying to say, like they're just producing great fighter after great fighter. So I would, working hard to get 1% of their reputation to do something similar.
I think we managed
Europe.
that, to be fair, already. Have you got any more questions? I've got one more.
I was kind of wondering about how you cultivate your own training methods and how you progress them? Because I know you say you're watching a fight, you're picking up a little bit, but when you're in it, the daily grind, that bubble of always being around different fighters and always, maybe you're in a 6-week or an 8-week, however long the camp is, how do you take your own methods forward whilst also trying to take someone else's forward?
I have made changes as the years have gone on, and
it's a grind sometimes though, isn't it?
Stick to itness,
Right.
that it's just showing up daily. Like I said, it's almost comical. Like I can see the kid walking into my gym and he's got like a cheap suit on or something. I'm your next McGregor, and it's like okay.
Have you had that happen?
Oh, loads.
Fucking hell.
Loads.
Really?
Loads
Of cheap suits.
No, I've trained in an MMA gym before, and what I quickly realised was that I don't want to say this in a nasty way because there's nothing wrong with people having dreams, but sometimes you meet dreamers who are never going to realise those dreams. And is it up to you sometimes to break that reality to them a little bit and be like, "Oh wait, mate, do you know what I mean? This isn't for you, pal."
Why would you say that? You would say that if the person. So like I have a very again, obviously Conor's the biggest name in my gym, so I can use him when I'm speaking to a fighter. I have a very clear roadmap now of what you have to do in order to become very high level. So I can actually show them, look, you've got to do this amount of training. This is the routine that Conor and our other guys who have done well have followed. So follow that roadmap. Now, week 1, they're all in, 2 sessions a day, and then you start seeing them drifting away a bit. So in 6 months' time, and I hear them in the gym, they're still talking about they're going to get that world title, I can pull them aside and say, well, your actions are not matching your words, because you're saying what you're going to do, but you're not following the map. You're not following the recipe, if you want, in order to achieve the results. So that's fine if you want to just do that, if you're just a bit of a dreamer. But I'm telling you that you're never going to realize those dreams because your actions don't match. Your intent doesn't match your verbosity, if you want to say. So yeah, I will pull people up. Now, as long as they're training, as long as they're making the sessions, I will keep supporting them, because you never know when a break is going to happen, and it's a physical activity that your skills do improve. You keep putting yourself into the environment that I've done my best to create, and I've seen guys that have gone from being really, really poor level to doing very well within a short enough period of time. But yeah, it's going to be daily training for a 10-year period, and then with a little bit of luck. And that's something that I've been lucky enough to work myself into a position that probably my guys now have a few opportunities that Conor's generation of fighters out in my gym didn't have, because now I do have the contacts. I'm very I'm pretty well respected in Bellator and UFC, and I've got good managers and I've good sponsors, and I can get my guys even silly things like known the right doctors to get medicals done and stuff like that. So I can make kind of those things happen in the background that people don't really see. I can make those things happen a lot easier now than I could have before. So yeah, they do the training part, and I'll try and make the rest happen, as long as they do the training part.
Do you think there's something about being Irish which makes you a good fighter? Not you specifically, but Ireland as a nation.
It's very racist.
Yeah.
he's a massive racist, so you've told him.
I'm a huge racist.
Finally,
so
we've outed him.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
Not really, like me and Conor are both Irish, and we've night and day different personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe something, from a small island that was oppressed and stuff like that by you fuckers.
Yeah.
So
again, not really sorry about that. Yeah.
He cast the first stone, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. If you have that kind of mentality and you're kind of against the world, and as a coach you see that and you say, great, I'll cultivate that. Because I always, I've got fighters that are super religious, and I've got fighters that are atheists, and I'll go to talking to them about God if I have to. I there's no levels I won't go to that if I feel that's their little fire. I had one fighter, he tells me it was what changed the fight, Pedro Carvalho, and he had a great win here. He beat the Bama world champion in a fight in England, which won him a huge contract with Bellator. Very, very happy with that. But going into the final round, it was probably 1-1. It was the last round, and he was really tired. He was exhausted. But I also know that he is broke, and he just had a kid, and so it was one of my rare times where I did get fired up in the corner, because I felt that was the right time to do that. And I told him, that guy over there is trying to take the money out of your kid, from your kid. He's trying to take food off him. If you don't win this fight, you're not getting the contract. You're going to be broke. You're not going to be able to provide for your kid. And that guy went out there like a demon.
I fucking love that. Yeah, I fucking love it.
That goes one way or the other for some people, though, doesn't it?
But because of, again, our trust, he's been with me for a year, daily training. I knew
that was the carrot.
He's a kind of a passionate guy. Whereas if he was more like me, I feel I'm not really that guy. I'm more cold and calculated. That's just my personality. I just don't get fired up. I'd be better saying to him, no, look, watch out for that left hand. You're going to move this side. When that left hand comes, I want you to level change and go. But I didn't bother with any of that kind of stuff because it was just they're in a bit of a dog fight anyway. So all the technical stuff went out the window because they were both tired, and I just felt I had to tap into that. In that instant, it worked with that fighter.
Because it's fascinating, isn't it? Because one thing that I love about UFC, and I've really picked it up from you and watching with the group of guys.
You're a self-admitted casual for anyone already commenting that in the because that's a dirty word in MMA. Basically.
But you can go fuck yourself. We're never going to meet. So the point with that is one thing I love about the difference in UFC and say modern day football or any of those things is the globalism of it. You see in football this almost homogenous style now, like all the Brazilians want to come to Europe, all the Americans want to everyone wants to come to Europe to learn the European way. And what really strikes me about what UFC has is you got something from South America which is completely unique. There's nothing you can find, you're taking something from everywhere, it seems. That must be really interesting for you to come up against all these different cultures. Like with Conor and Khabib, that was a culture clash, I'm saying, in and outside the ring. Yeah. That must be such an amazing, especially for a problem solver like you, challenge every time you get in the ring.
Absolutely. Even the style of wrestling those guys bring, is different than the American style of wrestling. So yeah, it's like we said right kind of at the beginning of this interview, that it's the constant new challenges that have kept me. Like I still feel every day I go into the gym, I still feel like it's day one. I still get that same fire if I'm going to corner, an amateur making his debut in a sports hall down the road. I still feel the same kind of rush and like, how's he going to do against this guy? How's this guy moving? It hasn't even begun to grow old for me yet. And I've always made myself the promise that the day that comes, I would stop coaching because I think you have to have that fire in you. And I've seen other coaches get a bit jaded with it all and get to the stage where they just don't really care anymore. And I just feel at that stage you've got to be honest with yourself and say, okay, it's time to try something new. It's time to step back. And I'm not saying I'll never get to that stage, I don't know. But I think you have to be honest with yourself, and your fighters deserve it. They're putting the full effort in, you should be doing it back.
Do you know like late night when you're about to go to sleep or something? Because for me, my brain comes awake sometimes when I'm supposed to be calming down. Do you ever like, that'll work in this fight? Like, does it ever come to you in like the most annoying moments?
Oh, my girlfriend will tell you terrible stories of like literally waking her up to say, could you hold my hand this way? And then I'm moving. And she's getting chucked around. We've been in restaurants where I'll make her stand up from a table and do a single leg on me, and yeah, she's my my uki. She's who I because like you said, it will come in at inopportune times. If it's in the gym, it's great. I'm surrounded by great fighters. I can play with stuff, but sometimes you're in a cinema and
come here, let us play with you in this restaurant.
I love the idea they're sitting in a restaurant and suddenly he gets down on the floor and people are, oh my god, he's going to propose, and next thing he's throwing his arm bar. People are going, this is beautiful, oh my god, what is he doing to her? That's horrific, that's terrible. That would be amazing. Can you imagine that? Yeah.
It's funny as well because she'll see like we'd be doing something, watching TV or something, and I'll start looking up and she go, okay, pause. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And she's quite good at like, okay, shoot a double on me there, and she kind of knows what to do because I've been using it for the last 5 years.
Very different to the conversations I have with women. Especially shooting on me. That's normally not the context. So I've had a really good chat today, lads.
It's been so insightful, hasn't it? It's been really interesting.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I really appreciate you coming.
I'm going to read your book now. I didn't get a chance to read it before, so
okay.
It's
Win or learn.
fascinating. Yeah.
I've got one last question for you that I'd like to ask people. How would you like to be remembered?
Oof. I feel like I want to do a David Brent speech, I don't want to be thanked. I just want to see me and go, I must remember to thank him.
You have no idea how much you've just gone up in our estimate. We are massive Brent fans, I tell you. I must remember to thank him.
Just must remember to thank him. It's funny, I'm meeting Joe Wicks now later on, and we kind of got to know each other. We met at each other some expos and stuff, and then we we twigged that we're both insane David Brent fans. So now, like, our whole, that's all we do every day. That's all we WhatsApp each other. It's just Brentisms.
Yeah.
And Orla will see me like that, and she'll be like, "What did he say this time?" I'm like, look, he said.
Yeah.
She's not that big a David Brent fan, so.
Have you ever thought of doing that?
We've made careers out of that. But
Yeah.
What you're doing, that's our job.
Have you ever thought of when someone gets into the corner, it's the end of the second round, and you just go, so... Oh, awkward. What was you should have knocked him out there. That's awkward, isn't it? I'd love to see you doing that in the corner for a fight.
Against karate?
Yeah.
All right. So, how would you like to be removed? If they have to put you on the spot, is there
I'd like to be remembered as someone who was a good coach for mixed martial arts, and that was technical and helped bring some fighters from beginner level to world level. I've been able to help some of my guys set up gyms, and they're doing quite well out of it now. So that I was helpful to a few people.
I like that. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. If you want to buy the book, make sure you check the link in the description below. And is there going to be a win or learn too? You reckon?
I don't know, and I always get asked, is there going to be an oral, or what do you say, audio version of it? So I have to get around to doing that at some stage.
Yeah, get Conor to read that. That'd be great. Yeah,
fired up the whole way through.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be quite funny.
Win or learn more.
All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Thank you.